It finally happened. The trade went down while I'm sure most of you were sleeping.
The alert landed on the eve of the 2026 NBA draft. Milwaukee had agreed to trade Giannis Antetokounmpo to the Miami Heat. Just like that, the player who had defined the Bucks for 13 seasons was leaving. Bobby Portis was going with him. Chris Middleton was already gone. Damian Lillard was no longer on the roster. Doc Rivers was gone too. 5 years after Milwaukee stood on top of basketball, almost every major piece of that championship era had disappeared. But Milwaukee didn't respond by stripping everything down and waiting years for another superstar. Young players arrived. 2 lottery prospects entered the picture. A new coach took over. So the real question isn't simply why the old Bucks ended. It's whether Milwaukee just found a faster way through one of basketball's hardest rebuilds, or simply traded one uncertain future for another. If you enjoy stories about the decisions that completely reshape NBA franchises, subscribe. Because Milwaukee's new direction only makes sense once you understand why the Bucks spent years trying to avoid this exact moment. Milwaukee's story didn't begin with failure. It began with a philosophy that worked. The Bucks drafted Giannis 15th overall in 2013, then watched him develop into one of basketball's best players. By 2020, the question wasn't whether Giannis was a superstar. It was whether Milwaukee could build a championship team around him quickly enough. So the Bucks became aggressive. They traded for Jrue Holiday, committed money to veterans, and gave up some future flexibility. Then, in 2021, it worked. Game 6 of the 2021 NBA Finals gave Milwaukee a chance to close out Phoenix at home. Giannis delivered 50 points, 14 rebounds, and 5 blocks. When the final buzzer sounded, the Bucks were champions for the first time since 1971. That championship validated more than Giannis. It validated Milwaukee's willingness to take risks around him. Jrue Holiday had been expensive. Building an experienced roster had been expensive. But now there was a banner hanging in the arena. When aggression gives you a championship, it becomes much easier to stay aggressive. And after 2021, Milwaukee kept seeing reasons to believe another title was still close. The years that followed were not a straight collapse. Chris Middleton missed Milwaukee's 2022 second-round series against Boston with a knee injury, and the Bucks still pushed the Celtics to 7 games. A year later, Milwaukee finished with the NBA's best regular season record. Then Giannis injured his back during the first-round loss to Miami, and championship coach Mike Budenholzer was dismissed. Milwaukee responded with its biggest gamble yet. Damian Lillard arrived in September 2023. Jrue Holiday left in the deal, and Milwaukee gave up more control of future draft picks. The idea was simple: combine Giannis's dominance inside with one of the league's most dangerous perimeter scorers. But stability never really followed. Adrian Griffin was fired after only 43 games, despite a 30-13 record. Doc Rivers replaced him. Giannis then missed the entire 2024 first round against Indiana with a calf injury, and Milwaukee went home again. Still, there was another reason to believe. In December 2024, the Bucks went undefeated through the NBA Cup and beat Oklahoma City 97-81 for the title. Giannis finished with 26 points, 19 rebounds, and 10 assists. The window didn't look completely closed, and that was the problem. There was always another reason to try one more move, until eventually, the Bucks began paying for decisions that had once helped them win. By 2025, the championship core was disappearing. Chris Middleton was traded to Washington. Damian Lillard entered the playoffs after dealing with deep vein thrombosis, returned against Indiana, and then ruptured his left Achilles in Game 4. Milwaukee was eliminated again. That summer, the Bucks waived Lillard and stretched the money remaining on his contract, creating flexibility that helped them sign Miles Turner. They were still trying to stay competitive. Then 2025-26 changed the conversation. Milwaukee finished 32-50. The offense and defense both ranked near the bottom of the league. Giannis was still elite when available, averaging 27.6 points, 9.8 rebounds, and 5.4 assists, but he appeared in only 36 games. On March 15th, he hyperextended his left knee and suffered a bone bruise. He did not return that season. A public disagreement later developed over his readiness to play. Giannis said he believed he was ready. Milwaukee maintained that he had not completed its return-to-play process. The NBA investigated and ultimately took no disciplinary action. The dispute did not prove that either side wanted the relationship to end, but it showed how different the situation had become. Doc Rivers stepped down. Taylor Jenkins was hired, and Milwaukee was no longer asking what it could add around the championship core. It was asking whether that core still existed at all. Basketball stories often get reduced to highlights, statistics, and trades, but behind them are people dealing with injuries, expectations, and decisions that can change years of work in a few months. If you enjoy the complete stories behind basketball's unforgettable moments, subscribe, because Milwaukee's next move changed the direction of the franchise. On the eve of the 2026 draft, Milwaukee agreed to trade Giannis Antetokounmpo and Bobby Portis to Miami. The Bucks received Tyler Herro, Kel'el Ware, Jaime Jaquez Jr, Kasparas Jakučionis, Nate Amon's draft rights, and future draft assets. Milwaukee also used the 10th pick on Brayden Burries. It looked like the beginning of a normal rebuild. Except Milwaukee had a problem. The Bucks don't own a first-round pick in 2027, and they don't own one in 2029 either. Years of win-now moves were still affecting the franchise even after the old era had ended. A traditional rebuilding team can lose, keep its own lottery picks, and gradually draft young talent. Milwaukee cannot depend on that process as cleanly, and suddenly the Miami return looks different. The Bucks didn't receive only distant picks. They acquired several young NBA players who can start developing immediately. The future had to arrive sooner. Tyler Herro is the most established player in the new group. At 26, the Milwaukee area native returns to Wisconsin after averaging 20.5 points in an injury-shortened season. But the Bucks aren't placing everything on him. Kel'el Ware is 22 and already averaged 11.1 points and 9 rebounds. Jaime Jaquez Jr. brings NBA experience. Kasparas Jakučionis is younger still. Then there are Burries and Ament, two lottery prospects entering Milwaukee's new era together. But the biggest change isn't any one player. It's what Milwaukee now needs from all of them. During 2025-26, the Bucks received only 318 total minutes from first and second year players. Every other NBA team received more than 1,300. This had been an experienced roster trying to squeeze another run out of an old window. Now development actually matters. Taylor Jenkins fits that change. In Memphis, he coached a young roster to 3 consecutive playoff appearances. And Burries offered the first small glimpse in Summer League, averaging 23.5 points, 4.5 rebounds, and 4.3 assists while earning first-team All-Summer League honors. That doesn't prove he's a future star. It doesn't need to. The point is that Milwaukee now has several young players whose best basketball may still be ahead of them. And that creates possibility. But possibility is not the same thing as a franchise cornerstone. Milwaukee itself hasn't pretended otherwise. After the trade, General Manager Jon Horst made clear that nobody was claiming the Bucks had suddenly become a better basketball team after losing Giannis. They are younger. They have more players to develop. They have additional assets down the road and a coach whose resume makes sense for this stage. But there is no obvious successor to Giannis. Maybe Burries becomes special. Maybe Ament does. Maybe Ware takes another leap. Maybe Herro becomes an important bridge between eras. Or maybe Milwaukee still hasn't found the player around whom the next contender will eventually be built. For years, the Bucks knew exactly what every major move was supposed to accomplish. Give Giannis another chance to win. Now their problem is completely different. They aren't trying to maximize something they already have. They're trying to discover what they might become. And eventually, the old and new eras are scheduled to meet again. January 28, 2027. Giannis is scheduled to return to Milwaukee wearing a Miami Heat uniform. That night will bring back memories of the championship, the MVP seasons, the parade, and the player who became the face of the city. But it will also show just how much Milwaukee has changed. For more than a decade, the Bucks knew who their future belonged to. Now they don't. They have young players, new draft assets, a different coach, and several possible paths forward. Maybe Milwaukee accelerated the rebuild faster than anyone expected. Maybe the sacrifices made during the championship years make the climb much harder. Nobody knows yet. And that's what makes this moment interesting. The Bucks didn't simply change players. They changed what the future of the franchise depends on. And whether that eventually looks brilliant or painful will be decided by players whose Milwaukee stories are only beginning. The Milwaukee Bucks just changed everything. So what do you think? Did Milwaukee give itself a real path toward the next era? Or is the hardest part of the rebuild still ahead? Leave your take below, subscribe for more basketball documentaries, and tell me which NBA story deserves to be examined next.